transferred $1,500 a month to my parents for 5 years. But when I asked them to babysit my son while I was away, they replied, "We deserve more than that." When I stopped sending money, my dad showed up at my door screaming. What he said next made me call the cops. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to call the cops on my own father. But there I was, standing in my living room, my 4-year-old son clutching my leg, as my dad pounded on my front door, screaming at the top of his lungs. Let me back up a little. My name's Mark Anders, and I'm 38 years old. I live in Seattle, Washington, with my wife Natalie and our son Jamie. I work in IT, a job that pays well enough to give my family a stable life. It's not glamorous, but I put in the hours, I save, and I make sure my kid has opportunities one never had. I grew up in Boise, Idaho, in a small, rundown house with parents who were always struggling financially. My dad, Richard, was a handyman, but he never held down a job for long. He'd always quit or get fired, blaming everyone but himself. My mom, Susan, worked odd jobs but spent most of her energy making excuses for my dad. They lived paycheck to paycheck, but instead of making smart choices, they blew what little they had on unnecessary things: fast food, junk they didn't need, get-rich-quick schemes my dad swore would change our lives. I learned young that if I wanted a better life, I'd have to build it myself. I worked my ass off in school, got a scholarship, and left for college the moment I turned 18. After graduation, I got a job in Seattle, met Natalie, and started building the life I always dreamed of. But my parents? They never changed. At first, they were just happy I made it. Then the requests for money started. At first, it was small. "Hey, son, we're short on rent. Think you could help us out?" Or, "Your mom's car broke down, and we just don't have the cash." It was always something. Always urgent. And I get it. Family helps family. So I sent money. Then it became expected. The moment I got a raise, my dad said, "So you're making more now, huh? That's great. You can send a little extra to help your folks out, right?" Against my better judgment, I agreed. $1,500 a month. Every single month, for 5 years. I justified it by telling myself they were my parents. They raised me, right? But deep down, I knew the truth. They weren't struggling because life was unfair. They were struggling because they refused to make better choices. Then came the moment everything changed. A few months ago, I had to travel for work, a conference in San Francisco. Natalie, who works as a nurse, had an important medical rotation she couldn't miss. That left us with a problem. Who would watch Jamie? We don't have a nanny. Our usual babysitter had a family emergency. So I did what any reasonable son would do. I called my parents. The conversation went like this. Me: "Hey, Dad, I need a favor." "Dad, what's up?" Me: "I have to go out of town for a week. Natalie's working. Can you and Mom come watch Jamie?" Silence. Then a sigh. "Dad, that's a lot to ask, Mark. You know we're not as young as we used to be." I frowned. "It's just a week, Dad. I've been sending you money for years." I figured. He cut me off. "Exactly, $1,500 a month isn't much, son. Not for everything we've done for you." I actually laughed, thinking he was joking. "You can't be serious." Mom jumped in. "Mark, honey, we're not saying no. We're just saying, if you really valued us, you'd show it. Maybe if we got an extra couple grand, we could reconsider." I was speechless. "Are you telling me I need to pay you to watch your grandson?" Dad scoffed. "Don't be dramatic. We're just saying, no." I interrupted, my voice shaking. "You know what? I'm done." Dad's tone turned cold. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means the money stops. All of it." He exploded. He ranted about how ungrateful I was, how they sacrificed everything for me, how I owed them for my success. I didn't argue. I just hung up. For the next week, I ignored their calls. We found a last-minute babysitter, and I left for my trip. Then came the fallout. 3 days after I got back, I was home with Jamie when there was a loud, angry pounding at my front door. I looked through the peephole. It was my dad. His face was red, eyes wild. I cracked the door open an inch. "What are you doing here?" He shoved it open with his palm, forcing me back. "You think you can cut us off just like that?" I stepped back, my heart racing. "Get out of my house, Dad. You owe us, Mark. You're nothing without us. You think you made it on your own? We raised you. We gave you everything." My hands started shaking. Then he said something that made me grab my phone and dial 911. "If you don't start sending that money again, I'll make your life HLL. You have no idea what I'm capable of." I pressed the call button. Dad's eyes widened. "You're really calling the cops on your own father?" "Yes." "Jesus, Mark. You're a selfish bastard." 10 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. My dad was still outside, screaming. My son was crying. My hands were shaking. The cops pulled my dad away. He was still yelling as they cuffed him. "You're gonna regret this, Mark. I hope you rot for this." My mom called later, sobbing. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," I said. "And you need to understand something, Mom. I don't owe you anything." Since then, I've gone no contact. I blocked their numbers, changed my locks, and warned my neighbors. My sister, who I rarely talk to, texted me a week later. Her, mom and dad are telling everyone you abandoned them, that you're selfish and cruel. Me? Did they tell you why? She never responded. It's been months now, and you know what? I feel free. For the first time in my life, I'm not weighed down by guilt or obligation. I can save for my son's future instead of throwing money into a bottomless pit. I'm still processing everything, but one thing is clear. Family isn't about blood. It's about respect. And the moment someone thinks they're entitled to your success just because they share your DNA, that's when you walk away. For weeks after my dad was arrested, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. I knew my parents well enough to know that they wouldn't just let this go. My dad might have been taken away in handcuffs that night, but I knew it wouldn't be the last time I'd hear from them. I just didn't expect what came next. The first sign of trouble came from my Uncle Ray, my dad's older brother. Ray and I were never close, mostly because he was the same type of guy as my dad, always blaming the world for his problems. So when he called me out of the blue, I knew it wasn't just a friendly check-in. I picked up, already bracing myself. "Mark, what the HLL is wrong with you?" Ray barked before I even had a chance to say hello. I sighed. "Let me guess. Dad called you." "Damn right he did. He told me you had him arrested like some kind of criminal." "Jesus, kid, he's your father." "He threatened me, Ray. He came to my house, shoved my door open, and screamed in front of my son. What was I supposed to do?" "You don't call the cops on family," he snapped. "What the HLL is wrong with you? After everything your parents did for you." That was it. The phrase I kept hearing over and over. After everything they did for you. I gritted my teeth. "Ray, what exactly did they do for me?" Because from where I'm standing, I put myself through college. I worked my ass off to get where I am. And in return, they guilt-tripped me into paying them $1,500 a month for 5 years. That's $90,000 if you do the math. And when I finally said no, Dad lost his mind. Ray scoffed. "$1, 500 ain't SHD for a rich guy like you." I clenched my jaw. "I'm not rich, Ray. I work hard for what I have. And that money? That was meant for my wife and my son, not for two people who see me as nothing but a paycheck." There was a long silence. Then he hung up. That's when I knew my dad had officially started his smear campaign. After that call, it was like a floodgate had opened. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years started messaging me on Facebook. "Dude, your dad says you're letting him go homeless. WTF? Your mom called my mom crying. She says you cut them off and left them to starve. How could you do that to family? We always thought you were better than that." I didn't even bother responding. Then, my sister, Danielle, called. Danielle and I were never close, mostly because she took after my parents. She was 35, still living with them, bouncing from job to job, always between opportunities. Growing up, I had tried to help her get her life together, but she always had an excuse. Now, she was calling me, and I already knew what she was going to say. I answered. "Hey." Her voice was dripping with bitterness. "Wow, so you're just completely done with mom and dad, huh?" I sighed. "Danielle, no, I mean, really, Mark. You just decided one day, hey, screw my family, I'm rich now, I don't need them." That about right. I closed my eyes. "First of all, I'm not rich. Second, you weren't there, Danielle. You didn't see Dad show up at my house screaming, pushing his way in, threatening me." She scoffed. "Oh, please. He was probably just upset. Maybe if you hadn't cut them off." I cut her off. "If I hadn't cut them off, they'd still be bleeding me dry. How much is enough, Danielle? When does it end?" Silence. Then, she said the thing that pushed me over the edge. "You think you're so much better than us, don't you?" I let out a bitter laugh. "No, Danielle. I just know my worth. And for once in my life, I'm not letting them take advantage of me anymore." Then I hung up. 2 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. It was from the Department of Social and Health Services. At first, I thought it was a mistake. But as I read the letter, my stomach dropped. My parents had applied for welfare and listed me as someone who refused to support them despite being financially able to. The letter stated that if I truly had the financial means to support them, the state might require me to pay a portion of their assistance. They were trying to legally force me to support them. I was shaking. I called the number on the letter and explained everything. How I had been voluntarily supporting them for 5 years. How they had manipulated and guilt-tripped me into sending money. How my father had shown up at my house making threats. The caseworker on the other end sounded sympathetic. "If what you're saying is true, you shouldn't have anything to worry about. Just submit your financial records showing that you've already provided significant financial support in the past. The state typically won't pursue someone who's already given that much voluntarily." I sent everything. Bank statements, PayPal transfers, even old text messages from my dad, explicitly asking for money. A few weeks later, I got a follow-up letter. The case was dropped. But that wasn't the end of it. A few days later, I got another call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. When I played it back, it was my dad. "You think you're smart, don't you? You think you can just walk away from this family like we don't exist? You think you're untouchable? You're not, Mark. You're gonna regret this." I sat there, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. And for the first time in my life, I felt something I never thought I'd feel toward my own father. Fear. After that voicemail, I knew my dad wasn't going to stop. The entitlement, the manipulation, it had escalated beyond anything I had ever expected. He wasn't just bitter about the money. He felt entitled to control me. And for the first time in my life, I realized something. I had spent years being afraid of disappointing my parents, but I had never stopped to ask myself if I even respected them. Now, I didn't just not respect them. I wanted them out of my life for good. I started documenting everything. I saved every voicemail, every text, every call log. I took screenshots of old conversations where they demanded money. I even kept a copy of the letter they sent to welfare services, falsely claiming I had abandoned them. Then, I reached out to a lawyer. I want to make sure they can never legally demand another cent from me. He listened, took a deep breath, and said, "You've got more than enough to build a strong case. If they try anything, we can have a cease and desist issued immediately." That wasn't enough for me. I wanted more. "Is there a way to make sure they never come after me again?" I asked. He nodded. "You can file for a formal family financial separation. It's not the same as disowning them, but it legally declares that you are not financially responsible for them under any circumstances. It's rare, but with the harmment and false claims, you have grounds." That was all I needed to hear. I signed the papers the next day. When my parents inevitably tried to apply for welfare again, the state would see official legal documents stating that I was not financially obligated to them. And if they ever tried to take me to court for support, they wouldn't have a leg to stand on. Of course, my dad wasn't going to take this well. A week later, my mom called me. I debated answering, but figured I'd give her the chance to say whatever she needed to say. She was sobbing before I even spoke. "Mom, Mark, how could you do this? You're making us look like criminals." I clenched my jaw. "I didn't make you look like criminals, Mom. You did that yourselves." Silence. Then she let out a bitter laugh. "You really hate us, don't you?" I sighed. "I don't hate you. I just finally love myself enough to stop letting you take advantage of me." Her voice turned cold. "You think you won, don't you?" I took a deep breath. "Yeah, Mom, I do." And then, for the first time in my life, I hung up on her. Now, here's where the real poetic justice kicks in. My parents were terrible with money. They didn't save, they didn't budget, and they certainly didn't plan for the future. They relied on me. So when the money stopped, their house of cards collapsed. Within months, their debts piled up. I found out through Danielle, who was still living with them, that they had taken out multiple credit cards, assuming they'd be able to pressure me into resuming my payments. But with no money coming in from me, they couldn't even make the minimum payments. Then, the eviction notice came. Danielle called me, furious. "Danielle, you happy now? Mom and Dad are about to lose the house." I sighed. "Danielle, I gave them $90,000 over the years. They could have bought a house with that money. Instead, they spent it all and demanded more." She huffed. "They were counting on you." I smirked. And that was their first mistake. They ended up having to move into a tiny apartment, a far cry from the 3-bedroom house they had been renting with my money. And me? I took the money I had been giving them every month and put it into a college fund for Jamie. The same money they wasted on fast food, cigarettes, and get-rich-quick schemes. It was now going toward my son's future. The last time I heard from my dad, it wasn't through a phone call. It was through a voicemail. A short, bitter message that simply said, "You were supposed to take care of us. I hope you can live with yourself." I deleted it without hesitation. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. It's been over a year now. I haven't spoken to my parents. Danielle and I don't talk. Uncle Ray hasn't called since that first time. And you know what? My life has never been better. Jamie is happy. Natalie and I are stronger than ever. And that extra $1,500 a month? It's going toward our future, not a bottomless pit of entitlement. I used to think that family was about sacrifice. Now, I know the truth. Family isn't about blood. It's about respect. And the moment someone believes they are entitled to your success simply because they share your DNA, that's when you walk away and never look back.